Hey everybody, Dave Hagan here. I want to intentionally talk about being intentional. That's today on the Financial Wellness Podcast.
Welcome to the Financial Wellness Podcast, Dave's weekly message to keep you on your path to the financial success. Here is your host, financial problem solver and talk show host, Dave Hagan.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to this week's edition of the Financial Wellness Podcast, or the TFWP, as we like to call it, coming to you from beautiful downtown Van Nuys. And hey, with us today, it's Brian Reed. I like that. I like that.
Going old school.
Yeah. You know, one time we had that, that crowd applause when we announced your name? That was pretty good. I was thinking about sneaking one in this week where it was like Eeyore. That would have
scared the hell out of me.
That would have really set the table for you here, huh? That would have been fun. Oh, man. So I've been thinking a lot lately about this topic of being intentional. And a year ago, I was on a radio show and I was going through our 10 Ways to Prosper and all the things that we talk about financial health and happiness. And at the end, they said to me, hey, what's the one thing that you would tell somebody that they should do? And it kind of caught me by surprise because I talked about 10 ways to prosper and different types of investments and blah, 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 blah. And they said, one thing that you would tell somebody. And I thought for a second and I thought, have a plan. Just have a plan. And I think that means being really intentional. You know, when we talk about money, we talk about deploying our funds. Brian, we've talked about that in terms of what Warren Buffett has said, and we say deploy our funds, and the word deploy is an effective way to talk about how we should think about that. But, I think that means really being intentional. So I went to the internet and I started doing some research and I'm kicking around, and lo and behold, I found all sorts of things about being intentional on the internet, books and things that people had written over the last whole bunch of years. And they weren't only talking about being intentional in their lifestyle, but also in their personal finances. So I had no idea. Here I was kind of thinking this through, and in doing the research for the show, it all popped up. So there were so many different people from so many different walks of life, different sources that had things to say. Someone said, by the way, hey, write down goals. And I'm going, wow, that's a good idea. And then I thought, but we did this, episode 202. We talked about putting down goals, but we talked about doing it as an upspring from your values that you've written down. In fact, I think we've done several podcasts on goals and goals arising from values and writing down goals and evaluating goals. And just last week, we were talking about, are you meeting your goals at the end of the third quarter? I mean, we've talked about it several times over the past several years. Someone else said, imagine the perfect day. And I thought, wow, that's pretty good. And then, hey, we did that. Episode 221. We talked about what's your personal or your perfect day. Someone else said, hey, practice gratitude. That's one of the things that you need to do.
And I was thankful for that episode.
You were but we did it. We did it on gratitude, Episode 144, we called it having an attitude of gratitude. Someone else said, hey, prioritize time for self-reflection. Well, we did that too. Episode 206, the power of meditation. A lot of these things we've talked about. Someone else said, you got to find your people. Your people will keep you intentional. And we discussed that in episode 207, talking about you are who you hang out with. The point is, be intentional is a theme that's behind so much of what we talk about here at TFWP. And I had no idea that people were even communicating about these kinds of issues over the internet. People posting things, people publishing books. There's all sorts of stuff on Amazon. By the way, there's a book, Be Intentional in Your Personal Finance, available on Amazon.com. So there's all sorts of books out there. There's all sorts of information out there, and yet we didn't even know it. We were just hitting the topics that so many of them talked about. And yet, as a society, we really don't seem to get it. 78% of Americans report living paycheck to paycheck. I'm talking about a website called NBC Better. 72% of the people out in the United States say that they're stressed by money. 57% have less than $1,000 in savings. 33% have no savings at all. And I seem to recall an article from last year, Brian, where they were saying that the vast majority of our populace couldn't even cover a $400 repair bill.
I remember that.
I mean, everybody's out there living on the edge. And certainly, all of these people are not doing this intentionally. They're not intentionally doing this. Rather, they're simply failing to be intentional about what they really want. The vast majority of people in our country. Now, financial intentionality is simply the idea of being intentional, deliberate, and purposeful with your finances. I mean, that's really what we're all about. That's what we talk about. We talk about different angles, different perspectives. We package it different ways. We laugh about it different ways, But that's really what we're talking about. And yet, clearly, most Americans aren't doing this. So now I'm getting a little freaked out when I'm doing the research. I'm going, oh, it's all going downhill where the sky is falling. I'm like the little chicken out there. And I'm going, why is this? Well, why is this? And I'm thinking that there's a lot of different reasons. I mean, people are distracted by stuff. They're distracted by the media. Goodness gracious, our media has become so broad in terms of the number of channels and ways that you can get information. We're distracted by the media. I think people are distracted by day-to-day life. They're focusing on their day-to-day life. How do I get home and minimize my drive in traffic? What have I got to get on the oven for dinner? What am I going to watch tonight? And they're not thinking about their long-term goals or taking a long view of things. They're distracted. Even worse, people have never been taught to think about being intentional. Think about it. How much of this did you learn in high school? None. Not me. How about you, Brian?
Oh, we talked about it. Oh, none.
None. I mean, zero. I remember them going, oh, here's how you balance a checkbook. And that was like it. No goal setting, no long-term thinking, no thoughts about being intentional. People have never been taught really how to pursue financial success. I mean, think about it. How much did you learn in high school about finances, except for, my experience with balancing a checkbook? Did anyone say, hey, why don't you set some goals? Did anyone ever say to me what is one of the most magical things that we talk about? And that is money doubles every 7 years at 10%. Or money doubles every 10 years at 7%. I never thought about that. When I was young, money saved was money wasted. It's like, whatever, because I want another car. I need a bigger car. I need a better stereo, whatever. I never was taught to understand the value of compounding money and to appreciate, the value and peace of mind that some kind of long-term savings brings. We're just never taught about it. Now, by the way, if you're listening to the podcast, congratulations. You're not going along with the vast majority of the people in the United States. I'll bet you got $400 for a car repair. I'll bet you're putting together money on a consistent basis with a long-term view. You're different. You're going to be successful if you aren't already, because you are listening, hopefully repeatedly, to a number of podcasts, a number of episodes on the podcast, and you're one of our Financial Wellness Podcast people. But with success also comes responsibility. Get the message out to others so they get their financial house in order. Share some of the secrets that we've shared with you. Share some of the common sense that we've shared with you, and get that information out there. You know, your family and friends will appreciate it. And of course, if you give them the link to the TFWP and they listen, that's cool too.
We're not going to complain.
We're not going to complain. We like lots of people listening to what we do. Now, let me ask you this, Brian. I know you hang out with, a group in the office, and you hang out with a different set of people that are probably people that are a little more creative in your off time. Do you find that one group or the other is a little more intentional or not?
I would say you've got a pretty good split in each environment.
Mm-hmm.
So the deciding factor isn't probably the environment. It's the people in those environments. You can have those who are very intentional in their actions about certain things, but sometimes I question, are they intentional about the right things?
Well, that's true too.
But when you were saying earlier that what were we taught back in the day? Zippo. And I was thinking about it. My sister used these poker chips to not bribe her kids, but when they were learning how to be potty trained, they got a coin that they could eventually trade in for, game time or something like that. It was just,
Sure.
and it's incentive. What if she had done, now you can leave this coin here, and in 3 days, it's going to magically double. So now you have 2 coins.
It's pretty cool.
All of a sudden, we're teaching them about compound interest, and,
It's pretty cool.
you start there.
Right,
Start
right.
them young.
Now, let me ask you this, I never had that opportunity to learn in that way or that training. So does that mean I was never potty trained?
I've wondered about the smell for years.
That's a
dude.
horrid thought. That's a horrid thought, huh? I think that there are people out there that are starting to pick that up. We had an interview maybe 7-8 months ago with Janine Letford, and she goes into schools and she teaches kids about these kinds of things. She teaches kids about entrepreneurship. She is actually a music teacher by day job, and she does this after school club. And she talks to the kids about being creative, and she talks to them about having some financial sense. I don't think you were here that night that she came in for the interview. Just a really thoughtful, forward-thinking person. And one of the things that she does with her kids is she said, "Look, let's set up an account. Let's set up." She said it's actually a Roth IRA. And the kids go out and get some seed money. Mm-hmm. And then she says to them, look, if you mowed a lawn on the weekend, you could throw that money in there, and let's look what that money would be. And because she's dealing with such young kids, the compounding that she can talk about is so extreme. It'll be $1 billion when you retire. But
it's magic.
It's magic, and it gets the kids psyched about, I want to put some money in an account, and when that money comes out, it's tax-free, and this is really cool, and it gets them all excited about that. I never had
that.
Any of that, When I was younger, I'd go, ooh, wow, I can get a bigger car, or I can, we can move to a bigger
shiny
apartment.
bauble.
I know. And
I must have it.
I'm that kind of guy. I like the shiny bauble, I remember when we used to work together, you'd say, Dave, focus. Because we'd be off on some tangent talking about whatever, and you go, focus, look at me, focus. And then we'd finish up our work back in the day. But it seems to me that if you focus on being intentional as you move through life, and if every day you wake up and think, what am I going to do with my precious time today? What's the highest utility that I can apply to this time? How can I use this time to get me closer to achieving my long-term goal? And that's not that you shouldn't have any fun. I mean, even Covey said in his book, you got to sharpen the saw. You got to rest, you got to play. In relationship to everything, but you got to rest, you got to play. But I think every day when we get up, we should think about, how am I going to maximize my time today? How am I going to use it to its highest utility? How am I going to be intentional about how I get through the day and make today part of being successful in getting through my life, not only financially, but in life in general as well. I think if you focus every day on being intentional, I think it'll help you make better decisions throughout your entire life. This is Dave Hagan, and you're listening to the Financial Wellness Podcast.
You've been listening to the Financial Wellness Podcast, Dave's weekly message to keep you on your path to financial success. If you have a question that you would like Dave to answer on the podcast, go to thefinancialwellnesspodcast.com. You can leave an audio message with one click of a button or type your message into the question box. Either way, it's sent right to Dave's phone. As an additional bonus, each month, Dave will randomly draw from the submitted questions and pick the winner of a free 1-hour personal conversation with Dave to help you achieve your financial goals. Don't forget to subscribe to the podcast so you receive the new episode notifications. Let's listen in now as Dave answers some emails.
All right, Brian, what do you got for me?
I've got one from Mark who writes in, Dave, I liked your show regarding add-on fees. What are your thoughts about businesses that add on to a bill a percentage so they can pay for health care?
Oh, man. You know,
Loaded.
I got onto my high horse a couple weeks ago where I was talking about add-on fees, and I was talking about people that added on for, I don't know, they added on for entertainment, or they added on for this charge or that charge, or people like cable companies that add on taxes. I mean, they have to, but they add on all this other stuff, and so that you're not really able to look at the right price or understand the right price. And I know that there are places now that add on for health care. And they say, look, we have to pay our people health care, so we're adding on 5% so that you help us pay for the health care. I don't know. I think that that's in the same category as all the other add-on fees. I think it's BS. Add it into your cost of doing business and charge us more, because otherwise you're decreasing the ability of your people to get tips. You're not being truly forthcoming and honest about how you're setting a price. And consumers like myself and like Brian, we can't compare apples to apples and oranges to oranges. I think it's a crock. And I am going to continue to very nicely and politely tell places that do this, I won't be back, because I don't think you're being honest and forthcoming in terms of how you price your product. And certainly, I don't think that I've got a duty or an obligation to pay health care or help pay health care for your people. I even question whether an employer has that duty, although, Brian, you and I have disagreed about that over the last couple of years. But I don't think it's fair to put it off to a customer in that matter. Increase your price. Just increase your price if that's what you feel you need to do.
All right, devil's advocate.
All right, I like it.
If you know that they're doing that anyway, what is the difference of being, hit with a wet salmon across the face, and you see the salmon coming, or you just know that at some point in time you're going to get whacked across the face? It's the same thing, isn't it? It's funny money. It's accounting. Plus, are they trying to kind of guilt you into paying it?
You bet they are.
Yeah, you bet they are.
I remember one time, I don't want to even talk about that for a minute. First, let's go back to the healthcare issue. Mm-hmm. I doubt whether they put on the menu or a sign on the front door that says, hey, we're going to up you 5% to pay for healthcare. And even if they do, I don't think you would notice it when you walk into the restaurant. I think it's like a hidden add-on fee. Just increase your price. Because the guy across the street may or may not be doing it. You need to be able to include, or need to be able to compare apples to apples and oranges to oranges.
What if it's a marketing plan? If the guy across the street is selling a dinner for $12 and his cost for his employees' healthcare is built into that $12.
Yeah.
Then the more socially conscious guy is going to try and, he's going to advertise that his burgers are only $10, but we're going to take care of our employees and have this gone. And I'm not going to say, liberal, whatever the term is, that wants to take care of everyone. And I don't know. It could just be a marketing ploy.
Yeah, no, I hear you. I don't. And by the way, I don't think it's liberal or conservative, really, necessarily. I think it's more, a truth in advertising. I'll bet you the guy that's selling the product for less isn't saying my burger is $10 plus I'm going to put an ad on. I'm sure he's out there saying it's $10, and then when you get in there, it's not. It's $10 plus. So I think it's less than being completely truthful and forthcoming. Now,
I see what you're saying.
If it said it on the sign, hey, we're going to stick you for 10% for healthcare, or this is the add-on breakfast store or something like that. Well, now I think your argument carries some weight, but I'll bet you they're not going to put that up on the sign. They're not going to tell you that.
So you're describing more of a bait and switch, where you find a price A, and then you go in and find out it's price A plus 20%.
Yeah, I think so. Or I'll give you another example. My wife and I went to a wonderful restaurant that we really like, a Mediterranean restaurant, and when the bill came, there was a 15% add-on, and they called it the hospitality fee, and I asked the server, I said, well, what is that? Is that you're pre-calculating the tip, I guess? I mean, you see that commonly in parties over 6 or 8, but not with a pair. And they said, no, that's for the belly dancer and the hookah lounge. And I said, but we're not sitting there, and a belly dancer really doesn't do it for me. And why should I pay for it? I mean, I had no idea. And so I don't think we're going to go back.
I'm here with my wife. I'm not allowed to look at that.
That's
I'm
right.
I'm not paying for that.
Well, and truth be told, it wasn't a 15% belly dancer. It wasn't kind. But I just think that to add that kind of stuff on without very clear advance notice is really kind of unfair. I think it's misrepresentation, and yet it's perceived as being okay, because companies as big as the cable companies do it. $29 for a year, and then it goes to $50 plus the box, plus the remote, plus the taxes, plus the plus. You go, wait a minute, this programming isn't even that good. So and I think that that trickles down, and people think, wow, we can get away with that, and I think that they do, and frankly, I'm hopeful that more of our listeners are going to say, hey, in a kind way, doesn't need to be a scene. I'm not going to do that because I don't think that that's forthright and fair and completely honest. And I won't be back. I won't be back.
Tell me how you really feel about this, Dave.
Oh, you think I'm a little? Yeah, you've hit one of those hot buttons again. Now,
I've hit a nerve.
Oh my goodness! All right, calm me down. I think that's a wrap. This is Dave Hagan, and you've been listening to the Financial Wellness Podcast.
You've been listening to the Financial Wellness Podcast, Dave's weekly message to keep you on your path to financial success. If you have a question that you would like Dave to answer on the podcast, go to thefinancialwellnesspodcast.com. You can leave an audio message with one click of a button, or type your message into the question box. Either way, it's sent right to Dave's phone. Remember, Dave will randomly draw from the submitted questions and pick the winner of a free 1-hour personal conversation with Dave to help you achieve your financial goals. Don't forget to subscribe to the podcast so you receive the new episode notifications, or share the podcast via the app with your family and friends. This is your announcer, Nick Appel, wishing you every financial success.